Wow. Okay. Hi, everyone. It's Obi Abuchi here with the Leading from Your Core podcast and Vodcast. This show is dedicated to helping leaders all around the world discover leadership wisdom, stories, and insights that will enable you to tap into the power of leading from the inside out. And I am delighted to welcome on the show today Adeola Oludemi. Adeola is a leader and a coach with a technical background, which we'll be exploring shortly. She started her career in engineering. She attained chartered status of the Institution of Civil Engineers, worked in that sector for over 30 years. And during that time, a key theme for Adeola has been leadership and building relationships. And so she's got her passion for developing people ultimately led her away from engineering to embark on an MSc in coaching and behavioral change, which has equipped her to support others in reaching their potential. And that desire to serve others through her leadership has also led her to take on a part-time leadership role with a children's charity and several trustee roles. So I am really looking forward to our conversation today, Adeola. It is exciting to have you on the show, so welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's exciting to be here.
Really is. And Adeola and I met at Yetunde Hoffman's What's Your Story conference. We were just reminiscing about it and talking about it before the show started. So some amazing themes that came out from your story that I'd love to unpack now. But before we go there, though, just so our listeners and viewers get to know who you are, we actually have something in common. So both started as engineers and moved into leadership and coaching and consulting. The only difference, though, is that I could only handle about 3 years of it, and you were able to handle 30 years of it. But tell us a little bit about why you moved away from engineering into coaching and leadership development.
I guess I came into engineering believing that I could do anything that I wanted. And I remember one of my early bosses used to say that when I was a young graduate engineer, I believed I could change the world. And so I came into it that way. And I think one of the reasons that I persisted was because I wasn't going to let somebody else curtail that. But actually what I missed was the impact it was having on me, on who I was, on how I showed up, on my health. And at a point when I remember my husband, I became hypertensive at a really early age, and it was diagnosed purely by chance. And my husband said to me, so what's the choice? Are you going to stick with this, with your stubbornness, and in which case, who's going to look after these children? Because you won't last. And he's a medic. So he was talking he said, you won't last. So you need to make a different choice, but it's up to you. And so I then moved from construction, which is where I'd spent my first 20 years, into more infrastructural management in the aviation sector. But what I then found was on my journey as an outsider, as a Black woman in a white male-dominated industry, the thing that enabled me to be successful were the relationships I built with people on a human level. One of the things I always talk about was when I had quite a large workforce that I was leading, for my direct reports, one of the things I did was I knew the name of all their spouses.
Wow.
So that I connected with them on a human to human level. So, because for them, it was a big stigma. Not only am I being led by a woman, but I'm being led by a Black woman. Where is there any other place around here that's being led by a Black woman? But actually, that Black woman saw them, connected with them, on a human level, and so built a trust. And actually, at some points when things got really sticky, they just stood with me because, one, they said I had integrity, but two, I saw them. But the thing that I found is, as I rose up in the organization, my value set was just bumping in to the value set of a bottom line. And I get the bottom line, I get that organizations need to make money, but I really feel that sometimes we sacrifice what we believe what we take as a short-term win, actually, for building a long-term relationship and building a legacy that will sustain.
Sure.
And so I'd kind of made a few changes, and I'm a woman of faith. And so I kind of spent time reflecting and felt, nah, this is not doing me any good. It's not serving me well. I think I've proved myself. And actually, I've got a whole load of transferable skills that I can have some fun with. And so, yeah, and I guess the at the end of it was I listened to myself and I wasn't enjoying it anymore. So I made some different choices.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. So it sounds like some incredible lessons though, and experiences, but also some unique challenges, because I know from my what feels like, tiny moment in the engineering world, it is, first of all, male dominated, absolutely. And I joined the graduate training program of the London Underground, an engineering firm contracted to London Underground, and I think there was only one female in our cohort, and all of the others, maybe two, one or two, but so yeah, very male dominated, first of all, and then, as you mentioned, then predominantly to be already in the minority, and then a Black woman engineer. I can imagine some of the tension that brought. And just reading between the lines, was that the bigger part of the tension that you faced as well? Because you talked about just that comfort with the experience that you were having and some of the pressures. Was that a part of it for you, or was it purely some of just the bottom line and those overarching values?
Yeah, I think it was certainly part of it. I remember I had a really, really emotionally intelligent boss quite late in my career. And in the organization I was working with, I went to do a presentation to the exec, and he kind of said, "What do you need?" I said, "I don't need anything. I kind of know what I'm going to present. And I just need to feel a bit grounded. So just give me 5 minutes." And I kind of took 5 minutes, was grounded, delivered it to the exec. And he kind of came out and said, "You absolutely smashed that. That was amazing." Yet when I went to do the same presentations to my peers, who were all white men, it was like you were in the classroom and they were all bickering and they didn't want to give you their attention. And it was just, why am I doing this? I've delivered this to people who are more knowledgeable, who are more impactful than you, but just because you see me as an outsider, and you kind of want to make me feel small, you gather together like a bunch of bullies in the playground and just be disrespectful. And we had a really good conversation after that. And he said to me, "Well, you just need to see them as they are. They're like bullies in the playground. But I don't have to stay in that environment if it's not good for me."
Yeah. So being able to make that choice that this is no longer serving you, this is no longer helping you. And as you said, your husband is saying, "I don't know if your health is going to survive this." as well. I know you said you took some time to reflect and you realized you had some, transferable skills, but it's still a big deal making a transition from a career that you've been in for 30 years into, something new. And I'd just love to explore some of the mindset that helped you with that, because that's a big deal. And it just, I'll say this because something you said at the What's Your Story talk that really spoke to me was this idea that our capacity as human beings is infinite when we connect with who we are. And that's such a powerful idea. So just, to unpack for us that transition for you, and how did you come to this place of really saying more of your infinite capacity?
So I think, you talked about where we met, which was at Yetunde Hoffman's Enjoyable Life, What's Your Story? And I'm a declared addict of What's Your Story. If anybody listening just needs a day of input, it's in December. Just Google it. It's amazing. So
we'll add it to the show notes. Yes.
And I went to one of Yetunde's events, and there was a gentleman, I can't recall his name, but he talked about how in his career, a lot of the decisions that he had made, opportunities had come to him, and he had just said yes. Now, I'm a woman of faith, and I kind of took that and rumbled with that. And I came to a place of the difference in the mindset was between scarcity and abundance. And wow. For me, in the place of scarcity, there is fear, there is anxiety, there is limited capability, there is the thing that you have to follow in the same thing that everybody else has done, because that's the only way to get to where you're going. And I guess I was able, through, reading and exposure, recognize that actually we are unique creatures. None of us, even if our gender is the same, even biological twins are still different. And so we have unique inputs, unique ways of comprehending those inputs. And if we hone in and discover who we are uniquely, we can harness that abundance that is out there. That means, yes, we need to be mindful of things, but there is an opportunity for us to build on who we are, to discover what there is out there for us. Because I remember when I kind of moved from engineering to leadership development, and I kind of looked at some agencies, and they were kind of saying, well, but you've got to go back into what you know in order for people to give you opportunities in where you want to go. And I said, I'm not going back there. I'm not going back there. And so I had to then find my own way that harnessed who I was, knowing, and it's not without risk. It's not without risk. I remember conversations with my husband where he kind of say, so do you have a plan? And I'll say, yeah, I've got a plan. But the plan never works out the way you planned it out. Yes. That's just the way life is.
I hear you.
And so, were there difficult conversations? Yes, absolutely. But there was belief that I knew that I had something. I knew that each day I showed up, I was enthusiastic. I was passionate. I was talking to people. I was networking as you do at various events and talking to people and getting feedback. And that then kind of helped build and bring confidence that yes, in the place of abundance, there are huge opportunities. And that's a place where we thrive. If we go into a place of scarcity, it's like being starving. You kind of just eat anything. But actually, when you're healthy and balanced, you can pick what's right for you in that moment. And what you ate today is not what you necessarily want to eat tomorrow. And you have that choice.
That's amazing. I love that. I love this emphasis on an abundance mindset over a scarcity mindset, because it plays out in so many ways, right? Whether that is people feeling like there isn't enough recognition to go around, so I can't recognize my people, or I can't just share an opportunity because if I share it, then what do I have?
Absolutely.
Right. And it's, for example, I talk about the fact, I don't talk about, oh, there's a limited pie and, do you have a piece of the pie? Or I talk about this infinite pie.
Yes.
And actually, when you tap into this sense of purpose and our uniqueness as individuals, we can create a pie from nothing. We can create a pie from nothing. And so that is amazing. And I love the fact that you're just bringing to life this, what's behind scarcity. It is fear. It really is. It's fear. And I often talk about the games leaders play, and when leaders are playing the ego game, they're very territorial, but that's driven by scarcity. It's driven by fear. There isn't enough. I don't have enough. There's only enough for me, not enough for everybody else. But that spirit of abundance helps you to see possibilities when other people simply see closed doors and obstacles. So,
and if anything has taught us about the fact that actually we have no control, surely it's COVID.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So if we were in that place of scarcity, imagine what that did to people when COVID showed up, and everything that they protected, their pie was absolutely being decimated, and they had no idea how to create a new one from the resources that were within. It's just scary. It is absolutely scary and so limiting. And actually, it doesn't have to be like that. And I guess one of the concepts I have always had, and to be honest, I don't know where I got it from, as a leader, is my job as a leader in a given context is to make myself redundant.
Wow.
So that I build up my people, I equip them so that I can see them. I need to make space for them. So I need to go on and find something else.
Sure. Wow. Yeah, that's now I feel like it's worth just pausing there for a minute, just for people to take that in, because that's a challenge for some leaders, right?
Yes.
Because it goes back to, what's your mindset? If your mindset is scarcity, then there's no way I want to make myself redundant, because do you know what I mean? Because because what do I have? But when your mindset is abundance, because what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing is just the incredible strength and perspective to say, I'm going to make myself redundant. Some people would look at it and say, but Adeola, what will you have? But what I see is, wow, now here's a woman, here's a leader that knows how to grow people. And so even if you make yourself redundant there, then I think I need someone like that, a woman like that who knows how to grow people, but only an abundance mindset helps you see that, rather than seeing it as, oh no, I've lost the opportunity for myself. And so many leaders hold on to positions and create these ceilings for their people because they're afraid, but I don't have anywhere to go. Well, keep growing. Just keep growing, and there'll be other opportunities.
It's fun and it's exciting. I mean, I remember one of my last roles, I had probably about 10 direct reports. When I left the team, I was still within the organization, I was doing something else, and they were giving an induction to one of the new exec members, and I was invited to come back just to kind of host the team. And the exec member turned around to me and said, so is this your team or is this his team? Because all I hear them talk about is all that you've done for them. And I said, well, it's not my team anymore, but and 8 of those people within 12 months of me leaving that team got promoted. Wow. Now, for me, I've done my job. I've done my job. Because I've gone on to something else, but I have set them all up for success. I've done my job. As a leader, I've done my job.
Yeah. And that is, just, I can imagine this, lots of leaders and emerging leaders listen to this, but if you think of an environment that you hear a lot, I hear this a lot, people in organizations say, hey, we want to win the hearts and minds of our people. We want them to be engaged. Well, how does that happen? It's by leaders being the sort of people that say, my job is to help these people grow. My job is to remove the obstacles to them reaching more of their potential. That's when you create an environment where people are high performing, where they are engaged. And, we circle back to this idea of some of the blockers that stop leaders from doing that is this fear, rather than dropping that down and really channeling their ego in the service of others and the bigger organization. So that is amazing. I want to go back to something you said earlier on, and just to help unpack that for our listeners and viewers, because you said, you refer to this idea of the resources within, and I talk a lot about that, just leading from your core, what's on the inside. What are some of the, in your work now, especially as a coach and developing leaders, how do you help leaders recognize more of those resources within so that they can unlock that and be more effective in their leadership?
I think first and foremost, it's about, and you talk about it all the time, about your purpose. What is it that is unique about you? What is it that is unique about your passion, your interests, your passions, your experiences that make you who you are? And that doesn't mean it all has to be about your successes, but also what are the things where you haven't done so well, but actually what have you learned from that? Because mistakes are opportunities to learn, right? So
absolutely.
What are the things that make you who you are? What do you bring? So there's absolutely some of that. And what are your values? So what's your purpose? What are your values? What is important to you? And how can you use that, for me, in a way that it serves you well, but serves those with whom you are in connection well. So whether that's your organization, whether that is your community in some sense. But I think my other thing with this about tapping into your resource within is about also your context. So I come of a generation of women who were brought up and were told that we could have everything. Now, I don't say we can't, I think we can, but there's a timing to it.
Sure.
So thinking that you can sit and eat the whole banquet all at once, you will be sick.
True.
But if you take the different courses and eat it over time, and not only do you have a long-lasting meal, but you savor the different tastes and flavors, in that whole experience. So for me, there's something about understanding your context and your capacity today. What is it? Where? Because some of us are absolutely up for stretch. We have that capacity for stretch. But some of us are in a place where we are not there yet. And for me, one of the things that I bring as a coach is I always bring challenge. It's just what I bring. But also to just explore some of, as Brené Brown will say, what's the story I'm telling myself? And actually, where is it based? Is it still serving me well? What assumptions are wrapped up in that story that I need to unpack?
Yeah. Love it. Some incredible things there. And it just speaks to how abundant that internal resource is, because you talked about purpose, and really discovering your purpose, and how that's something that helps you to tap into more of your internal resources. And I also like the fact that you draw on the challenges as well, the difficulties that we've had, and that's also part of your own story and how you can serve the world. And for example, so my company, we've got a team of coaches, and we have a personal mastery academy. But one of the drivers for the personal mastery academy, yes, it is helping leaders be more resilient. Yes, it's helping them be effective, but it's also helping them avoid burnout. But I know that from personal experience, because I remember, almost 10 years ago now, facing burnout, suicidal thought. It was just such a dark time. But that darkness has allowed me to speak into people's situations with a purpose and with a clarity that before that was merely theoretical.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's even our pain and our challenges can really serve others, and we begin to, it enriches our values of
absolutely
some of what we want to do. And I love this idea of context, just context. What's the phase of life that I'm in? What does progress look like? I may not be able to eat the whole elephant right now, but I can start with a little bit. So some powerful things for really tapping into our resources. I'm curious, just going back to this idea of even our failures and challenges can give us some richness to how we show up. What's been one of your biggest failures or defeats or challenges? but what has it taught you? What have you learned from it? And obviously, there's this bigger story you shared of transitioning from engineering to coaching, but a particular failure.
I think one of the biggest for me is at a time when I was, I guess, in my words, colluding with the scarcity narrative.
Okay.
So I'd kind of come into engineering. I was all about getting chartered. I got chartered, and then there was, I guess, a pathway that I was told that that's the way you need to go, and I was kind of trying to fit myself into this mold that everybody else, that's the way to go, and I was trying to fit myself, and there was just no way I was fitting, and whether it's the things I said, whether it's the fact that if I say it's red, it's because it's red, not because somebody told me to say it's red when it's pink. I don't do that. And that became, so there was a whole thing of wrestling with this whole, well, if you don't comply, you won't progress. And actually, what does success look like? Is that my definition of success or somebody else's? And so, colluding with that narrative of scarcity, leading me to a place of becoming unwell, was probably one of my biggest failures. And for me, what I found is quite common in my journey is when I get to that place, I end up having to go back. So if I was kind of plotting a line, there'd be a step where I'd go back, and then I would reflect, learn, and then I would take off again, and I'd take off at a much, I suppose, higher velocity.
Wow.
Because I've done that learning. And that's been even in this transition, as I left engineering, there was an element of going back. And so what did I bring? What are the transferable skills? What are the skills that I had acquired from my master's? So how am I going to put them together? And how am I going to take off again?
Wow.
But yeah, certainly colluding with that narrative of scarcity, and that appeared everywhere, and in my attitude, in my behavior. I remember in the organization I worked in, we had this major canteen, and at one point, I would regularly go into the canteen, and I went into the canteen at a time when I'd made some key decisions around my career, and the whole scarcity thing had gone, and I was now exploring. And somebody said to me, "Is it the same you? Your features are softer, your tone of voice is really soft, your body is far more relaxed." Said, when you were in that other role, you were like some kind of field marshal. Everything was bang, 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 bang. And now you're human.
Wow.
And so it's not just about the work I was doing, it's how I was showing up, how I was able, and in a way that then prevented me from making the connections and some of the relationships I needed to harness in that place of abundance. Because I myself wasn't there.
That's really, you hear it often that we embody without even realizing it, that it's not just a mental thing, that we embody this scarcity, this fear.
Yes.
The way you're describing it, it sounds like there might have been more of that command and control type approach, right? Because listen, this has got to be delivered, otherwise my neck is on the line, and so I'm going to put your neck on the line. And yet the fact that there was this tension for you, because you said it's these weren't your words, but it sounds like you felt, I'm not really being true to who I want to be on the inside, but I don't know how to get out of this. And I imagine there are so many leaders in that situation. It's like, I'm not being true to me, but it just feels like this is the game I've got to play. Right?
Yes. And I was fighting. And for me, there was an incongruence in who I really was, and what in coaching, as we talk about it, what the system was requiring of me, and that incongruence was very real. And then the choice was for me to move within the system, but that takes courage.
I was hoping that word would come out, because it's an important one for people. It really does take courage.
It does.
It really does take courage. This is, I describe these two games leaders play. There's the ego game, which is all about the scarcity and fear and dominance and my empire, or there is the service game, which is about purpose and contribution and love. And the thing that I get thrown back at me all the time is, but Obi, what if you're just, you want to play the service game, but all around you, it's all of this ego and the system. How do you do that? And part of it we've been talking about now, and this was something that you said as well at the conference is you got to know who you are. You've really got to know yourself and be clear about what you stand for.
Yes.
And not in every situation that doesn't necessarily mean, oh, I've got to change careers or what, you know, in some cases it's I'm just going to show up differently.
Yes.
Because you've talked about that as well. Just how am I showing up? Am I showing up in a way that is true to me?
So I'll give you an example. So one of the things I love that is true to me is color. I love color. I particularly in the summer months, I was always into trying to find some African print somewhere. And I remember we were in a maybe 3 or 4 story building, and we had a central staircase, and I would often be seen in pink and yellow and all this. And I get my colleagues walk past me on the corridor saying, my goodness, can't you wear blue and gray like the rest of us? What's with the pink and orange and yellow? Can't you just conform?
Wow.
And then
wow.
I went to work for a leader who would see me in my yellow. At the time I had a yellow and pink dress, really bright African print. And he turned around and said, that's my sunshine, just turned up.
Wow.
So who would you give discretional effort to? Obi, who would you give discretional effort to? The person who calls you a sunshine, or a person who looks at you and tells you you just need to conform?
Yeah. That's wow. And the thing, just listening to this as an observer, I think that those leaders who are looking for conformity, who are looking for groupthink, they limit the organization, right? They limit the potential, they limit the effectiveness. But here you are saying, well, someone's saying that's my sunshine, and you're like, hey, I want to give more. There's more I can give. And so this is a critical message for leaders thinking, actually, is it possible that by me not showing up fully and expecting people to conform, that I'm limiting the potential of my people? How do you show up as courageously as possible? Because that gives people permission to show up fully as themselves as well. And so it does take courage, but everyone wins when people are able to bring the best of themselves to whatever initiative or whatever venture they are working on. So.
And I think the thing that is also helpful though is that there is now evidence that where people are authentic and where you have diversity in your workforce, it improves your bottom line. It improves Indeed. Your P&L. So why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah. Why wouldn't? I mean, that's a good question, right? And for some people, it's they don't know how to, or they're not comfortable, and this is where they need to acknowledge get support, right? Draw on, even being able to acknowledge as a leader, it's, hey, I know this is important, but I'm not really sure how we need to do it. Let's work at this together. Can be incredibly enabling. I love it. We've had so many rich things that we've talked about. I want to end on a question, just a piece of advice really from you to leaders about what would you say to leaders who are wrestling with this and wrestling with this tension of not being true to themselves, feeling like they desire to be more authentic, but they're dealing with some of their own fears about what the backlash might be, what they might lose if they desire and choose to become more authentic. What advice would you give to leaders who are eager to operate in this healthier way?
What I would say is, I think it's important to listen to your heart. So if they desire to operate authentically, then that is something they need to take seriously, because it impacts, as we've talked about already, how they show up. However, what I would also say is that in the mindset of scarcity, and you talked about earlier command and control, there is a tendency to plot a route to the desired outcome, as if you've got control over it, when you don't really. In this context, I would say, take the first step. Decide how big or small you feel able to go, and take the first step. And notice, give yourself permission to notice the impact of a small first step, and you will be blown away at just making small adjustments aligned with who you are, aligned with you being authentic. Take the small step and notice, and you'll be encouraged to take the next step and the next step. And before you know it, you've got momentum.
Amazing. Now that's brilliant, because this, for some people, it can feel daunting, right? You've never done this before. So two great pieces of advice there. You want to operate more authentically as a leader, then hey, listen to your heart. It is telling you something good for you, good for your people, good for your health, good for your family. But don't feel like you've got to be able to control it. Just take that first step and take the next and the next, and love it. You get to that place of momentum.
And we talked about the system earlier. Once you start being authentic, the system colludes with you anyway.
That's that, and by that you mean supporting you, right? Yeah. That's incredible. Hey, so many rich stories and insights. Adeola, I've really enjoyed having you on the show, and thank you for sharing your story authentically as well, and wishing you incredible success as you go on to have an even greater impact as a coach and as a developer of people than you did as an engineer. So thanks again for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great to explore and share and just have a great conversation. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And to all our listeners and viewers, I hope you enjoyed the show and listening in on the conversations, and do take to heart the insights and tips that Adeola has shared. And remember that if you want to be a courageous and resilient leader, if you want to live life on purpose and with purpose, then it starts from the inside out. Have a great day, and see you on the next show. Bye-bye.